The Canadian Armed Forces need a new fleet of vehicles to support their operation, not just today, but for decades to come. And to that end, Minister McGuinty and I are proud to announce the launch of a new strategic partnership with General Dynamics Land Systems Canada. It is through this partnership, our government, and this is one aspect of the partnership, let me be clear, but through this partnership, our government will invest nearly $2 billion over 4 years to build and deliver 190 armored combat support vehicles, expanding our fleet to 550 vehicles. And as the people in this room and those you represent know, these vehicles are designed to keep soldiers protected, mobile, and mission-ready in the most demanding environments. For decades, GDLS Canada has made vehicles that supported the CAF on military bases across our country, in Afghanistan, in Latvia, and also, as we just announced last week, the provision of another 35 vehicles to Ukraine to help defend themselves against Russia. Thank you, and thank you for that. And the new fleet order that we're announcing today will continue that legacy, serving our women and men in uniform at bases across the country. Every single one will be built right here at GDLS Canada's factory, right here in London. Our new partnership with GDLS Canada will create and sustain over 6,000 high-paying Canadian jobs every year over the next 8 years.
Nearly $2 billion, hundreds of new armored vehicles, thousands of Canadian jobs, and every single one of them built on Canadian soil, not shipped in from somewhere else. This is the third major defense announcement in a matter of weeks, following the submarine deal and the surveillance aircraft partnership, and it's starting to look less like a series of one-off announcements and more like a coordinated national strategy. Carney laid it out in 3 words: build, partner, buy. Build in Canada first, whenever Canada actually has the capability, which is exactly what this GDLS deal represents. Partner with trusted allies when Canada doesn't have the capability alone, which is the logic behind the recent agreement to manufacture Saab's GlobalEye surveillance aircraft in Canada, a deal that already guarantees a third of that aircraft's entire global production run happens here. And buy from allies only when building or partnering isn't realistic, but always with conditions attached that force money back into Canadian industry. The same principle behind the submarine deal, where 100% of that contract's value has to be matched with investment inside Canada. What makes this GDLS announcement bigger than the headline number is what's hiding underneath it. Behind every armored vehicle built in London is an entire cross-country supply chain, cable and wiring technicians in Richmond, Ontario, steelworkers producing armor plating in Regina, Saskatchewan, thermal imaging engineers in Quebec, specialized electricians in Nova Scotia. GDLS Canada already supports more than 10,000 jobs nationwide beyond the 6,000 this new contract adds directly, meaning this single factory floor in London touches communities in nearly every province. It wasn't all celebration, though. Local reporters pushed Carney on something uncomfortable. This specific region of Ontario has some of the highest unemployment in the country, and one contract announcement doesn't erase that overnight. Carney's answer leaned less on the dollar figure and more on predictability. Long-term government partnerships, he argued, give companies the confidence to expand, build out supply chains, and chase export markets, since roughly 80% of what this factory already produces ships internationally. He also pointed to a policy change that got far less attention than it deserved: a new tax deduction covering manufacturing investment, R&D, and technology spending, which now puts Canada's effective tax rate on new manufacturing investment below half the G7 average and 4 points lower than the United States. Reporters also circled back to a story we've covered before: the Gordie Howe Bridge toll-sharing agreement. Carney used this press conference to clear up exactly how it works, and the details are more favorable to Canada than some of the early reporting suggested. It's not a split of profits, and it's not a 50-50 split of tolls. It's an agreement to split net revenues, meaning after operating costs, for 15 years, and critically, no revenue sharing happens at all until Canada's full $6.4 billion construction debt is repaid first. Carney went as far as to say net revenues could realistically be negative in the bridge's first few years as traffic ramps up. That's about as strong a version of "this costs Canada very little in the near term" as a government is likely to say on the record. Not every question stayed on defense and jobs. With wildfire smoke from central Canada still hanging over the region, a CBC reporter asked Carney directly whether approving a new oil pipeline made sense in the middle of a worsening climate crisis. Carney didn't dodge it. He pointed to conditions attached to that pipeline approval: an emissions reduction project equivalent to removing 90% of vehicles currently on Alberta's roads, a 75% cut to methane emissions, and reforms meant to close the gap between Canada's legislated carbon price of over $100 and the actual market price, which had fallen to roughly $20. A gap he described as proof that strong-sounding targets without real investment behind them don't actually reduce emissions. By the end of the press conference, one phrase kept resurfacing in different forms: Canada focusing on what it can control, rather than waiting on decisions out of Washington. It came up in his answer on jobs. It came up in his answer on the bridge deal. Whether or not Carney ever says Donald Trump's name directly, that message is clearly aimed at an audience much bigger than the reporters in that room. Whether every part of this build, partner, buy strategy actually delivers is something only time will prove. But the pattern is now impossible to ignore. 3 major defense and industrial announcements in a single month, all built around the same idea: reduce Canada's dependence on decisions made in Washington, one factory, one contract, one supply chain at a time. Do you think Canada is finally making the long-term investments needed to stand on its own? Or is this more political messaging than lasting strategy? Subscribe to Unbiased Canada, hit like, and let us know in the comments.